let me give you my top five because I
Okay.
just went ahead and put it out there and see what you think. My top five, and this is another factor that I want to throw out. The last factor I want to throw out there before I put out my top five. I do think national relevancy matters.
Okay.
You know, that's the one thing that I think could hurt. Like if we had this discussion in the early 2000s or late 90s, that's what would put maybe a Miami or a Nebraska or a Florida State very high on the list.
Yeah.
Although I guess Florida State's been relevant recently with, when Jimbo was there with the Winston teams and that. But particularly Miami and Nebraska, obviously, right, Mark?
Well, not to cut into your list here, but
Yes.
what I'm attempting to do would be all-time rankings, not this is where they stand right now. So all that has to be taken into consideration, meaning
all right.
you've got your consistent programs through time, and then you've got your microwave dynasties like Miami. And, it all has to be taken into consideration, at least. And then you could also, David, think about the relevance or the weight given to recency. Should a national championship in 2005 count more than one from 1935?
Great point. See, that's why I think a lot of people. Remember, I had asked you that question at one time because people usually look at national championships, I believe, starting in the quote unquote poll era from 1936 to the present. That's usually what's recognized. All right, here's my top five, and this has probably been a fairly etched in stone top five for me, probably in the last 7 to 8 years.
Okay.
My number five is Oklahoma. My number four, some might be a little bit surprised by this, but I have Ohio State at 4. But I think it's a close call. I have USC at 3. I have Notre Dame at 2, and then I have Alabama at 1.
Okay.
Now, what do you think? Now, my reasoning for putting USC, and the USC-Ohio State thing was close. Although I think with them having head-to-head, their bowl record, those factors weighed heavily on me.
Okay. So you answered my first question. So yeah, USC has a decided head-to-head over Ohio State and has a remarkable Rose Bowl record in particular.
I think it's 13-10-1, Mark. I don't know if that's decided.
Oh, okay. It's decided since the 70s. So Ohio State must have had a nice lead because, man, since let's go back, I'm gonna date myself, since my lifetime, which would have started with the Buckeyes win over OJ in the 1 versus 2 matchup in the Rose Bowl. So the Ohio State gets a win there, but USC beat them 3 out of 4. No.
Well, yeah.
Archie lost 3 out of 4
Correct.
Rose Bowls, but 1 was against UCLA. So USC won 2 out of 3 there. So that's a 2-2. And then, of course, they played in the 80 Rose Bowl for the national title that the Buckeyes could have won, 17-16. So there's 3-2. The 85 game makes it 4-2. Then they played back-to-back in 89 and 90, as you well know.
Right.
Home and home. So that takes us to, where am I, 7-2? Wait a minute.
Right. 08-09.
And then 08-09, USC wins back-to-back again, and then the Buckeyes win the Cotton Bowl. So whatever that is, it's like 8 or 9-3 in the last 50 years.
Yeah, I mean, I know Woody won his first national championship by beating them in 1954.
Yes.
In the Rose Bowl. So that you can throw that in there. And by the way, two 1-point losses to USC cost Ohio State national championship.
Yeah, I know.
In the 70s. How tough is that?
Well,
including the game that made a very young Mark Rogers cry. Yes,
pretty much. You pretty much nailed it. I remember standing at the bus stop the next morning, not like wanting to live, like I was in 6th grade, 6th grade. And yeah, my goodness, I was devastated because, Sports Illustrated had a big layout, and this is at a time, obviously, that you can relate to, David, when you were just starved for information. You're reading the sports section every day, and you're getting your hands on sporting news and Sports Illustrated and everything possible. And USC was a decided favorite in that game. And my Buckeye colored glasses, of course, made me think that Ohio State's going to win the game. But I was hearing how talented USC was. And then Ohio State plays this tremendous game. They've got a lead with 2.5 minutes left. And then USC just rams the ball down their throats for the game-winning touchdown.
That was a tough one. Charles White.
Yes. It's like 17 plays, 83 yards, I believe. Yeah, it was brutal.
Well, I mean, you look back on it, they had 3 NFL Hall of Famers on one football team. I mean, when you got Anthony Munoz, Ronnie Lott, and Marcus Allen on one football team, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
And the entire roster was NFL guys. Now, it's conversely, Ohio State had a better team than them in 1984 and then lost by 3 points.
Yep.
With that whole team with Byers and Spielman and Chris Carter and Pepper Johnson and Tom Zach, a quarterback. They were better than USC in 84 and shouldn't have lost that one, but, couldn't come back late.
When you consider the talent on that 84 Ohio State team, you just mentioned a bunch of them. Pretty much the offensive line was an NFL offensive line, and Spielman and Pepper Johnson at linebacker. And as you mentioned, Chris Carter and Byers, and the secondary was really good. William White.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the nice things of the Urban era was finally ending that losing streak with that Cotton Bowl victory. Even though that was a year where we wish we could have made the playoffs, it was nice to end that losing streak. Although Tressel should have ended it in 2009 when he coached scared and blew the game in 2009 to Matt Barkley and USC. Yeah. But, I digress. But, yeah, I mean, here's the one thing I'll say, and I'll just say this as a long-time Ohio State fan. The one thing I would say that where I think we should be higher, and I know you don't put as much weight on national titles, and you talked about them being subjective and all of that, but I will say this as an Ohio State fan, and just bottom line, is that for a program that's produced more first-round draft picks than any other college program, as we talked about it, is in the top 3 or 4 in All-Americans produced, NFL draft picks, is tied with USC and Notre Dame for the most Heisman Trophy winners ever. I would like to think we should have had more than 2 national titles in the last 50-some years. I mean, that's the wont of every Ohio State fan. And every Ohio State fan would be honest and would admit that, and I'll admit that today. And that's why one of the reasons I had to put us at 4.